Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for your support of Indie Agency News. And let's meet an indie agency. We're going down to our second member in Australia. Notice how I pronounced it somewhat properly, Pete. Pete Maiden, founder and CEO of CONVICTS. And you got a huge operation in New York and in the United States, which we're going to talk about as well. But first of all, thank you for supporting this. We love, I may cut you a break here and not ask you the Pavlova question, since the kids' godparents are Kiwis and we have New Zealand sort of history. I'm going to leave that one for now. I will wait until I come down to visit everybody to have that debate. So
I like it. It's almost Christmas and it's Pavlova season, so watch out. Yeah.
For those who don't know, Pavlova is the greatest dessert on the planet. It is a meringue with fruit and whipped cream. Very simple. Both Australia and New Zealand claim it, but we'll save that for another day. We'll save that for another day. And you're ready to jump in and just say Australian.
No, I was going to say, like, you could get like Russell Crowe. There's a couple of bands that Australia likes to claim that really are new Kiwis. We can have them as part of the conversation. But yeah, Pavlova is undoubtedly the greatest invention of the South Pacific, we'll say for now.
Yeah. I mean, the Anzac cookie is a close second too. Love that one as well. All right. So what we want to get to first is give us a little bit of the background of the company, of the agency, how it got started and where you vibe and where it started and where you are now.
Yeah, cool. So we launched the company 10 years ago in New York, as you said. My background was in editorial production. So I started my career at Rolling Stone magazine in New York. And I did love publishing, but I ended up being steered down the kind of agency road, working freelancing for different agencies in New York. And when we started CONVICTS, I really missed that direct relationship with audiences. And I didn't want us to live in a bubble. So we started, we actually didn't use the word agency at first. It took us a few years to kind of gain the guts to say it out loud, but we were always voicing culture first and foremost. So typical to a kind of a publisher, we always have a pitch meeting. We've still had a pitch meeting every week for 10 years. The team gets together and pitches ideas for stories they want to tell, briefs from brands they've spoken to. I think I've heard it called tissue paper session recently, a lot, which is just, what are the challenges that our brands and clients are having? But I think that voicing culture has always been our North Star. I mean, we kind of define it as troublemakers for a better world is our purpose, all of those words. But it's been really important for us. And I think before I ever talk about capabilities, I always just talk about that voicing culture, because what it's done for us as an agency is it's allowed for us to participate in culture. We call it our originals division. We've published hundreds of stories, thousands of short films are out there, all the way through to feature films. And I think the fact that we're living and breathing in culture and spending a really good chunk of our time working on that, when it comes to an agency brief challenge, I just feel like we're not living in a bubble. We are actively, and whether that's on the social channels or actively thinking about, like, where is the temperature of the conversation? I know every agency obviously probably uses the word culture, but we're just not sitting in a room analyzing. We are like out there pushing. And I think it makes us a little different. And the reason I think as an indie it makes sense is there's a freedom to say stuff. And if, we've been pretty divisive with those topics and we don't hold back. And I think that, we don't have someone saying, you can't say that, guys. And we certainly won't tell our team that.
Yeah. And I think, so number one, love the editorial background, because in the book, Hey Whipple Squeeze This, Luke Sullivan talks about the importance of brands acting as publishers. And so you take that construct, and I think people take it in such a literal sense, but when you take it in a structural sense, in a foundational sense, you start looking at, oh wait, we are publishers. We're publishing this brand in all these different areas. And so I think that core philosophy, but it's not so much just the philosophy, it's also the discipline. And I think that's a really key component to this. You coming from editorial, especially high profile editorial, the discipline is incredibly important. And you can still do the bold thing, but you also understand how to be disciplined about it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I would say the consistency and discipline is where you actually find what works. We've got a great investor in Australia, Ines Kingsmill, formerly CMO of Virgin Australia. She's a friend and family, and just started, from day one has been there supporting us. And what she's always said is, like, you've stuck with it. You didn't just do this. A lot of agencies will do one thing a year that they'll put out there, and hey, we got behind this year, and this is our, we put it in our decks, and this is our do good moment for the year. But we've done it over and over every week, every day we're publishing. And not to say that it's more important ever than the client work. In fact, it's the opposite. The client work always takes priority,
Sure.
but there is a discipline to it. And I think that's when you learn what's working, because you sometimes think you've got a hit piece of content and it falls flat. And sometimes you nail it with the simplest production you could imagine, and so it's really important.
It is so hilarious. Like, this is going to be a winner. It's like total dud. And then it's like, oh, let's just throw this shit out. It's like, oh my God. I'll give you a good story about this. I had done a radio advert. This is back in 2002, I think it was, a long time ago. And almost on a lark, I said, you know what? Fuck it, I'll enter it into the Radio Mercury Awards, the big radio award. It's global, but the cash prize, thank you very much, Radio Advertising Bureau, for that. Love that. And I tossed it in just as an afterthought. It's like, let's see. Because the one that I thought was going to win didn't. The one that I just threw in as an afterthought won. And I got cash money. So there you go.
Yeah.
Everybody loves cash.
Yeah. So look, it's just the thing that makes us who we are. And, sometimes there's brands or clients that will say, not for us. We need a safer fit. We need someone that's not talking about, divisive topics, or sometimes politics or the environment or gun control, or things that, like, some of our team are passionate about and have to say something, want to tell a story around. But what's interesting is I've found the opposite almost. Like, you'd think people would shy away. We often have really conservative clients calling us and saying, hey, can you help us? Unexpected clients that we now love. We've worked with KPMG for 4 years on a series now. And, it's an unlikely fit that there's these very corporate disciplined clients. But I think they're coming to us because they love seeing the fact that we're not willing to hold back our voice. Clearly, we've got the capabilities and the disciplines they need to make the stories, or tell the get the campaign right, get the strategy right. But what it's done for us is it's become a really interesting default marketing tool for the agency that it wasn't the plan to be. That's not what the pitch is about. It's not a marketing line. From an accounting perspective, I don't think of it as marketing, but it is who we are. And when people talk about purpose, which I know is like a word that was buzzing for a period of time, they're like, how do you keep it alive? I'm like, well, it's not about talking about it. You just got to do it, and you got to do it over and over and over for a decade.
Yeah. Repetition. Why is being independent so important to you? I mean, you've touched on a few things, but being independent really does matter. You've touched on people who don't, we don't have to be told, people don't tell us what to do, et cetera, et cetera. But what are some other aspects of being independent that are important to you?
I just, I think the voice and the and that freedom I was talking about, like, for the team to know that it's the people in the room that will make the decision at this point and say yes, or, like, even when we're considering a pitch, what approach should we take to this client? We're not needing to run it up the ladder and make sure it suffices or it hits the box. And, like, we've won pitches where, clearly the brave and boldest things have caught the attention of the CMO or the team, and they've said, let's go for them. Let's take the risk and and go for the smaller agency or the more independent fit. I just don't think those ideas would have made it out the door. If people first and foremost were worried about, someone shutting it down, or if they thought that in the room, you know what, why am I going to bother pitching it when I know it's going to go to 2 more levels and get approval? And look, I don't know if those approvals exist in that way, but what I know is like our team, when we sit around and focus on work, there's complete freedom. And I think that's what attracts clients to us, and what attracts, team members to come and stay. We've had a good chunk of our team have been with us for a decade. Coming to work. We all love coming to work. In fact, we just had a big chunk of the team down here for a week for an offsite.
Nice.
And you can just feel that spirit. It's alive and well. Yeah.
I love that. You're like answering all the questions already. So I think I'm just going to have to pivot here. You've already talked about the main. Okay. Well, let's give another one. What's another main reason a brand should work with Convicts? You're excellent. You're excellent at this. You just rattled through everything. I was going to ask about talent next, but
I guess we'll talk about capabilities, because in the end, when you make a decision, and this includes when we make a decision of who we work with, I think at least half of the decision is based on, are they going to get the work done within the budget, on time, and is it going to be killer work? And like, that is still like, I can talk about all the fun purpose stuff all day long, but like in the end is like, are they going to get it done? And one thing that we've always done, and again, maybe it comes back to a nod to publishing, is like, we're makers. Like when we produce a campaign, we do it in-house, and that means shooting it, editing it, coloring it. Like we are the makers, and it's the thing I still feel most confident about. And maybe this is because we really, really started in content rather than agency, really about production and content. And then we've added these more upper funnel services as we've gone and needed to support our clients with them. But when it comes to the making, it's hard work, it's long hours, it is incredibly satisfying. And I think like making it, I mean, even the podcast that you do, Doug, like there's something about the switch to like, all right, I'm making something now. It's going to exist. It's in a time capsule. Let's make it. Let's not talk about making it. Let's go make a piece of content that's that's real, and it takes a certain mentality to switch to hit record, and that I would say is the reason that I think maybe not people work with us for the first instance, but that we get the repeat business is that they
makes
know,
sense. Yeah, that makes 100% sense. Totally get that. No, it's interesting because again, going back to this editorial side of it, and then the added layer for me is broadcast. And so I think we're hardwired for that. But what I think is really interesting, and this is like my professional broadcast segue into talking about talent. What's really interesting is people like you and I, and maybe more senior people at your agency, that are able to see the talent coming in, and first of all, they may think they're hot shit. So good for them. But the other thing is they might be rough around the edges, or you see that thing where it's like, okay, I see exactly what you're doing here. And I'm not trying to sound like old man screaming at the clouds, but here are a few things. What I tell you talent is, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to give you context of some of the things I've learned in the past that could help you. And it's not like, do it this way, because that doesn't help anybody. That takes talent out of it. When you give them the lanes to run in, and when you provide context that is not nostalgic, it's like, oh, it was better in the old. It's like, no, this is what I learned. This is what helped me. You see if that works for you. So I'm curious about how you work with your talent in getting the most out of them.
Yeah, I mean, I almost feel like I need to go to management school a little bit more, to be honest, and learn how to micromanage a little better. I think like we give our team a lot of freedom. Listening to the way you were explaining that, you would say it better than I. I mean, I guess the thing I try and do is make suggestions all the time. Like, hey guys, can I suggest we think about it this way? Like the tone of that, it's more tonal almost sometimes, when it comes to like, and this is really important, and maybe this is part of like attracting and holding on to good talent, is like, there are sometimes tough decisions to make, and maybe it's around a budget or a mistake that was made, or something that was missed, or something that went wrong. How about that?
Yep.
And the inclination is to try and bullshit around it with the client.
Yep.
And my gut on it always is, let's tell them what's going on straight away.
Yep.
Don't try and hide from it. Put it out there. Let's own it. I'll own it. I'll lead that call. Tell them what's going on. There's a mistake. There was a problem. And I think like it's incredible, like the kind of power you give your team when they know like you're going to keep it real. You give them the freedom to make mistakes, and when you make them, I'll own it for them. And if it costs the agency money, that's okay. I'm not worried about us losing. I've said that actually about new business too. I'm like, get us in the room. I don't mind if we lose 20 pitches in a row, as long as we're in there pitching and learning. Obviously we got to get down, but like have a crack at it. Give it. Pitch the idea that you really want to make. And I think same goes for when you I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but F it up is like, don't,
go ahead.
Let's be honest about it. Yeah. Sorry guys, we didn't budget for that. We're out of scope here. We should have thought about that in advance. Can we do it together? Let's walk down that road. So I think, that's the other thing about talent is I think like there's a culture, and it's not about culture of like happy hour. It's a culture of like we support each other, obviously through the wins, but really it's the tough moments where you want to see people's backbone, come to life.
Yep. 2 more quick questions. Do you consider yourselves weirdos, misfits, or underdogs?
Oh, 1,000%. I mean, we like the team that was just down here. Some of them have been with us, as I said, for 10 years.
So a combination of all 3?
All 3 for sure. I mean, our senior writer walked into our office in Chinatown at the time, 10 years ago. He was a master's student, writing student, doing his lit master's at Columbia. He was sweating with a skateboard in his hand. He was just like, I'm never going to get this internship. Why am I even bother walking in? He walked in the room, started talking about the writers he liked. And we were like, you got the job, dude. And he was like, what? Oh, man, I never thought that I would fit, Yeah. And he's been for 10 years, and he just came to Australia for his first time and had a week here. And it's, I think that is for sure who we are. And I think I learned pretty quickly, especially we hired a really cool managing director a few years ago that came from traditional agencies. And I was like, we're going to know within the first 2 days whether this is going to work or not. And it did. Mm-hmm. She's like, she just loved the team. She was like, how cool you've got this group of misfits. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. Last question.
Yeah.
Whether they are an existing client or not, which CMO or marketer do you want to say hello to?
It's so funny. I knew you were going to ask this question. I didn't prepare for it, and I was like, I need to drop a name here.
You don't have to.
But what was funny is like, and this is totally self-serving in new business. Like, I really want to get back now that like I feel like we're so past the pandemic woes. We just did a big campaign with Qantas Airlines, and it kind of like really brought back the travel thing for me. And I really miss, like, we did a lot of work with Ian Schrager for about 7 years. We did all of his campaigns, and I have some awesome Ian stories. He's a total mentor. I have nothing but respect and love for Ian. But we haven't done a lot of hospitality work. So I was sitting here, I'm like, whose name can I drop in hospitality to try and get their attention? I was like, I wonder if we can figure out how to get Paris Hilton to watch this. And then we can figure out who the CMO at Hilton Hotels is and connect those dots. So I don't know, maybe you can help me out on that, Doug.
There's a thing called LinkedIn we could look at too. I mean, that might be a slightly easier way into finding out who the CMO of Hilton is. So, but it's fine. No.
It's the funny thing. I was starting to do that, and then I just thought it'd be funnier for our podcast.
I think it's hilarious. I think it's hilarious, and would be. I
But
will
Mark,
see if
Mark Weinstein, if you wouldn't mind, yeah, or Paris, let Mark Weinstein know.
Okay, Mark. Yeah, Mark.
There we go.
Got it. Pete, thank you so much for, number one, again, supporting this mission. We really, really appreciate it. I can't wait to get down there. We've been talking about it, so we'll get all the Aussies together. I know there's a great indie community there, and looking forward to meeting a bunch of new people down in Australia. But thank you so much, and thanks so much for joining us, and best wishes for continued success, my man.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much, Doug. Look forward to hosting you down here soon.